Terry. iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Comcast. We will have everything at that point. We're at 6 million views, 6.1 million views today and counting. Tomorrow we switch over to 6.2 million views today. Things were going. Our goal is to get to 10 million views between now and the end of the year. So, if it's Tuesday, we're talking about movie reviews and more. So, good friend, Mike Szymanski, Rachel Manson, Mike Kaspar. Mike, talk to us. Where did you come from?
Where I came from
In
today.
general.
My mama. No, I've reviewed movies for a lot of big publications, Entertainment Weekly and Us Magazine. I was
USA Today.
USA Today covered Oscars with Brian for almost 30 years. We go back and we did all the roundtables and one-on-one interviews with all the stars, and I always considered myself more of a writer than a critic. I was never really a good critic. I felt like I didn't have the ego for it, but I love talking about movies, and Roger Ebert was one of my best friends, so that was nice.
Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Mason. I made the documentary Circus of Books. That's what I'm most well known for, but before that I had a very long history as an artist, making music and art and experimental films. So this is my first major traditional film, although it was about anything other than tradition. It's about my parents who were big players in the gay porn industry, and that's actually how I know Mike, because Mike is such a legend in reviewing gay porn.
Mickey Ski was.
Mickey Ski. And so I reached out to Mickey, to help me find some archival photos of gay porn stars who had died of AIDS, because I really wanted to be accurate in my depictions of the guys who I wanted to memorialize in the film. And I thought, okay, you know what? This guy, Mickey Ski, might have some archival images. And sure enough, he had the most beautiful pictures. And we have this great montage in the film of, the young men that died of AIDS tragically. And so Mickey let me use those pictures, and then we became friends. And we're working on a new project, which we can talk about later.
And Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Kaspar, and I do a radio program out of the University of California, Irvine, called Film School Radio. Been doing it about 12 years, interviewed about 1,500 filmmakers during that period of time. And my love of movies goes way back. I was a projectionist at what they used to call an art house back in the day.
Which one?
I was in Orange County, called the Balboa Cinema.
Oh,
And it was kind of a precursor to the Wilshire. You see a lot of the film, a lot of the art houses were in that.
I grew up going to those. They're the best theater things ever.
It was such a great place. In fact, I got hired by virtue of my 5 favorite films. The interview consisted of, what are your 5 favorite films? You're hired, that kind of thing. And so I was a
film nerd style.
Yes, that's right. So I was a projectionist for a couple of years there. We had 5 double bills a week during that period of time I worked there. So it was like a crash course in cinema education, and my love of cinema continues to this very day.
And Terri, nonstop.
Hi, Terri Marie, Nonstop, Brian's co-host, fitness personality, and...
With over 3 million views and counting.
Yes, we're doing very well. Very excited to be here.
No, those are just your views.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm very excited about everybody's accomplishment on our team. We have a great team, and with all the craziness, I'm very thankful for the stuff that we've accomplished this year, and the last 5 years I've been with you. So.
And this is what makes this a fun show, because we've all been cooped up for the longest time. There's a very, very, very few people in a studio doing anything. Obviously, we're all protected wearing our own creative mask. She's got a movie review more one on. We're gonna make sure that logo becomes bigger.
Yep.
Mike, I don't know what Mike's is over here. Casper's.
A friend of mine, she made this for me, and it was some kind of a tapestry, kind of a yoga tapestry. So there, you'll see yoga positions somewhere on here. But it was a friend who made this for me.
And obviously, Rachel, you got one that's stylish. I like that little emblem there.
You know what? This is actually, I didn't do this on purpose, but I get to brag because this is the Emmys, and my film got nominated for an Emmy. And they sent us, thank you, and they sent us masks. And I just thought, that was smart of me to wear that. Now I get to plug that, but I didn't do it on purpose.
And obviously, Mike, you've been growing your beard for the longest time, which makes me...
I've got my hippie stash. And, that's me.
So what day sequestered is it for you?
It's 202 today, as far as California being closed off. and the
Wow.
parking lots being shut down and the bars being closed. I mean, you know, we've had different levels of opening and closing, but we are the longest running state that has been closed and has not reopened. And 202, I'm counting it down, and I'm not shaving my beard until it's over.
You're gonna have a Rip Van Winkle beard, that's for sure.
Well, this is COVID hair right here.
Yeah.
I haven't had my hair cut since.
And I haven't dyed mine, as you see this, but
Yeah,
I
there
started
you
to
go.
realize it looks kind of cool, so I've been told that. So I was like, all right, my roots are showing, I'll let that work.
And during this whole thing, what people were doing was watching movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
when you think of Netflix, Apple, Disney Plus, and all stuff, no theaters are open. So we
Yeah.
got word 2 days ago, Terry, that Regal, cinemas, nothing. All those people who were there waiting to go back to the theaters, the studios to cancel all the movies.
Wow.
Nothing until next year. So the hope was for maybe James Bond. Nope. And I kept telling them back in February, all that stuff is going to be nothing. And I was right again.
What about-
And it's a shame in a way, but it's still about safety,
Yeah.
because we all
Yeah.
talked about this. None of us would go to the movie theater. I don't know about you, Rachel, but I've
yeah, I
polled
mean-
85 people as of yesterday. Only one person would go to the movies.
Well, I mean,
know
what
what?
movie is really worth your actual life? I mean,
The-
you know,
the drive-thru-
you could get killed
Yeah,
from it,
yeah.
so.
The
Well,
drive
drive-thru is different because that's
Yeah,
outside,
Yeah,
which is
and
good.
you're in your own car, but I mean that would be the venue that you'd be able to go to. I know that my girlfriend took her daughter last weekend to drive-in movies, but I guess they're showing old movies still
Yeah.
in theaters. Yeah.
Well,
Which is a good
yeah,
thing.
And Outfest, I went to the Outfest Film Festival a couple weeks ago, and they did a drive-through. And you know, I think festivals are being creative, but you know, it's pretty rough even then, just to
I have
keep
some
it
friends who went
sustained.
to Orange County to see Empire Strikes Back because it was back, you know, in theaters, but only in Orange County because not in LA. And they said that they went. It was 9 o'clock at night, and there was every 12 rows was a row of friends, you know, that could be together, and they actually felt very safe. And these are people who they haven't even gone to restaurants, and
Oh, really?
they said they went there and they, you know, they actually didn't have any problem with it, but it was practically empty.
I had a friend go to see Empire Strikes Back in Florida. Parkland, Florida. And I go, so how did they do everything? And she goes, well, there was only 5 of us there. So we sat way in the back, and then nobody was in the middle, and the other people sat on the other side, the other 2 people. I go, so what happened? Because I've always said this, what happens in the dark when people take their mask off, when they're drinking, laughing, and all of that stuff? And that's the whole issue. But who knows?
Yeah.
In the
And when someone
meantime-
sneezes, I'm out of there. So
Yeah.
that's it, you know.
Well, in the meantime, at that point, so when I'm thinking of, I'm working backwards first. So we just saw, some of us, the Herb Alpert doc. John, Mike, you just interviewed John, who I really like. So, but before that came out, he had Sergio Mendes in The Key of Joy,
Yes,
which
sure.
was the last real interview I did in person, which was February 21st. We did that at the Grammy Museum, which I loved. And then he did The Happy Days of Gary Marshall for ABC, the first doc that was on ABC for
that
a
was
while.
good, yeah.
And then he did this one, but I was always looking to the Herb Alpert one, and it was really good because, you think of the Tijuana Brass. You
Right.
think of that stuff that he was doing, and then him being a singer, because you don't think about him singer, but I always tell people, I tell young people, he's the A in A&M music, just in case you don't know or never heard of Herb Alpert.
And he gave the Carpenters their start. Nobody would sign the Carpenters, and he was the one who gave them their
Herb
start.
Alpert?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Wow.
Nobody knows
Yeah,
that.
with him, Jerry Moss, and that. But
Wow.
Mike, you did an interview with him. Talk about that, because we haven't been able to set that up yet.
Right. Yeah. No. And just to your point, what you were talking about, Mike, and that is, he started out as a musician, not just as a trumpeter, but he also wanted to be a singer. He has an amazing backstory about the early days of his career. He and Lou Adler were trying to figure out if they could make this work as a singer-songwriting team. And they went to Sonny Bono as their very first sort of audition to see if they had enough, to make it. And Sonny Bono told him flat out, "You get a day job because you guys aren't good enough." And so they just he just is a very tenacious person who really was also, he worked his craft. In the film you see, he said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. He lives that. He's now a sculptor. He's a painter.
Herb
He's-
Alpert.
Herb Alpert is.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I sort of jumped around a little bit. Yeah. Talking about just what a terrific person he is.
And he's responsible for bringing Brazil music in.
Yeah, he's
Sergio
a great
Mendes
guy.
is a very, very good friend.
It's a very
and
good
Terry, you
documentary.
will see this soon because you have the link. So hopefully you'll be encouraged to see that because it's really, really good. And again, this is about documentaries because I love them. And what were people doing when they were in lockdown? They were watching movies, you know?
It's coming out, let's see, I think this week, depending on when we're going to be
And they did a
airing this.
live broadcast on Facebook.
Right.
So this is where the bad Brian comes out because I get upset when all of a sudden, because there's no rhyme or reason when things are being released now,
Oh, yeah.
on stuff. And I'm going to use Rachel as an example. I was so happy with what happened with your film. I was so happy that you knew Mike. And then I'm like, Mike, I got this person. I'm going to talk to Rachel. Do you know? Oh, I just happened to know her. I didn't even know that. And I said, okay, let me set this show up with Mike and I'll surprise
Yeah,
Rachel.
that was cool. Yeah. Well, it's a weird thing because documentaries, it's like a renaissance time. And also, like, now you're like the cool kid on the block, but you used to be like the weird nerd that no one would talk to if you were in the doc space. Like, they were not cool, but it's amazing how, I do have to say, I'm the beneficiary of the timing of Circus of Books because they came out when there was a huge demand and interest, especially on Netflix, which is where Circus of Books came out on. But if you just go back, 10 years before Netflix, you were really going to the indie art house theaters to find documentaries. You weren't occasionally you would rent them in a video store, but they weren't cool, things people talked about a whole lot. You were more in the world of nerds, people like us.
Did Circle
Circus.
of Books get a theatrical release at all?
So Circus of Books was going to have, through sheer willpower on my end, a theatrical release in LA and New York because I made phone calls to everyone I could think of to try to, including Greg Lemley, shout out to him for
Who
giving
I
me.
love.
He's such a great guy because even though this film is a Netflix original, I was still pretty much independent on my own, working out the financing with a lot of help at the very end, and Netflix wasn't going to necessarily give me a theatrical release so we could qualify for the Oscars. So I was like, all right, well, if that's not gonna happen, I'm gonna try to make that happen because to qualify for the Oscars, you need to get these 2 screenings in New York and LA. So I went to my indie roots in New York, which is Anthology Film Archives, one of the really great art house theaters, and they set it all up, gave me a really friendly discount, and same with Greg Lemley, and then COVID hit. And it was really the next week or so, right after I had just secured those screenings and was already panicking on how I was going to pay for it. But then they said, we secured those screenings, so the AMPAs the American Motion Picture Association said, as long as you can guarantee that you really did have screenings locked in and we're going to do them, we'll make sure this is Oscars qualified. So the film is actually Oscars qualified, which is the coolest thing about it. And if there's an underdog film of the universe, it's Circus of Books.
Yours.
Yeah, no, everybody
Because
even said,
here's the thing.
Yeah.
When we did a Zoom interview way earlier back, I think it's either April or May, one of the two, it had just been out for a week, and you said you had gotten 1 million views, right? So what happened after that 28-day period? That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, so the film in 28 days, I believe they told me it was at 1,600,000. So it was fast approaching now 2 million views on Netflix, which is really great for Netflix, the platform.
Let me stop you right there. The views, ladies and gentlemen, it's about the views, not followers, not subscribers, and not likes. The views. I was so happy when you said that because imagine if you didn't have that and it got buried someplace because it could have.
Well, and also, what's really exciting about a film like this is that, again, this is kind of the time for minorities. This is a gay film, and even when not only gay but gay porn, which is very camped into this category of okay, well, no one's gonna watch that except for the gays, and so it was no, actually, a lot of people wanted to see this. It was a really mainstream film, and people
it's a
want
family film.
Yeah,
It's a
weirdly
family
enough,
about
it's a family, religion, all the things you would not expect to center into a gay porn movie. And I think one of the exciting things for me is like that's what is so great about the Renaissance in documentary films. Like we're telling these stories that are the underdog stories, and the whole wide world is interested. They're not like little minority stories like, okay, that's for you and your gay friends over there, but it's
But what
actually,
makes it even more interesting is that not only are you in it, it's about your family,
Right.
And you directed it.
Yeah,
That's what makes it even more
A lot
iconic.
of personal stuff
Yeah.
in there too.
well, and
lot
there's
of
a
personal
yeah,
stuff.
no, it
Some
is.
great parents.
Oh, well, thank you. And I, you know, I have to say that was probably the hardest thing about making the film, but also, of course, what made it, I think, like hit this high level is that, you know, I really dug into a personal family story that everyone can relate to. A difficult relationship with a mom or, you know, parent, and then having a parent, you know, react in one way or another through the lens of their religious bias to, you know, a child being gay, which is what my mom did with my brother. She was very upset about it, even though she's like the queen of gay porn. And you would think, you know, so there's conflicts, but the way that I really hoped to tell the story was universal. So, yeah, and by underdog, I really appreciate that this film keeps going further than I would have imagined, because in some ways I wasn't fighting for it in the way that I ended up fighting for it later, because, you know, I get notes now from people in like Indonesia and,
Wow.
you know, places where you can't be gay. You cannot be gay out there. Like, it's
No,
not
no.
a thing. And, you know, you think about like, oh, here we have all these different sort of rights and privileges. And then you think, oh yeah, no, there's still places where that's
You'll be
not,
killed for it.
you will be killed, you'll be persecuted
Poland
outright.
and Russia. I mean, come on.
Russia.
Well, you know
yeah.
what's interesting, Rachel, is that Canada, you can't, because Sherry and I, we talk about films, a lot of times they can't see some American films.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if yours can be seen. I got to ask her because.
Well, no, mine is totally fine in Canada. It's not in Syria, North Korea.
No, I mean, but I mean,
and-
no, but I
like
mean
two
on
other-
Netflix.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Canada's got restrictions on that.
Well, you know, there's some law that I heard in Canada that has to do with like violence, because I was working on a film that had something to do with like you can't have like, and I don't quote me on this, but it's something to the effect of like rape and blood in a movie. Like you have to like a bloody death scene with like blood spilling, and you have to choose between certain, like there's a certain
You can like
threshold.
one or the other.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of funny. We have this very high tolerance for violence, but
Yeah.
a low tolerance for sex, whereas other countries
Exactly.
are like the opposite, you know. I wish ours was the opposite, frankly, but
Yeah.
But talk about that family relationship, because I knew your parents.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't know them well.
Oh.
But it was one of those things where I knew them from my old co-host, Bill Margot. And, you know,
Oh.
and then so.
how
my-
did you know them? Like, how?
I know lots of
Oh,
people.
but your past, but
Brian knows
but no,
everybody.
because my parents were always like shadow people who never, you know, my mom's always like,
They
I
were-
don't know
They
anyone.
were very nice.
Oh,
They were
so-
very
so I
nice
just-
and
yeah.
very open.
Oh, well.
And so, but I didn't know their backstory. Like, I didn't know
Oh.
your dad was an inventor. I mean,
Yeah.
I was fascinated by that.
No, in some strange way, because my dad was kind of like a failed inventor and like a guy that never quite made it in Hollywood, you know, as a lot of people do. They wind up in porn very accidentally. And, you know, my parents were like, all right, we can like deliver this crazy magazine Hustler for a few weeks. We'll see how long it floats us before we get these dialysis inventions off the ground. And
Exactly.
suddenly, you know, who knew that Larry Flint's Hustler magazine was going to be this enormous deal, and that my parents, being workaholics, would sell the crap out of it, and then, you know, suddenly be like the local distributors of Hustler that Larry Flint came to rely on. So
Exactly.
that was, you know, and also the 70s. I have to say, I love the 70s and everything about the 70s. When you look back on time, you see all these weirdos, these mavericks who are like, let's just make the raunchiest magazine ever and like put a woman in a meat grinder, whatever. Like these weird, you know, they're so weird. And yet it was like this sort of maverick time. You know, I keep thinking too about like there was a craze in like skyjacking, you know, like airplane hijackings. Like that's pretty wild. But it's like when? The 70s. Like all this crazy stuff was happening in the 70s. So in a way, the boom of porn, it doesn't surprise me that it connects to the 70s when there was a maverick free spirit.
But the interesting thing about it, for the audience that has not seen it, it's really about the family story. You know, I've never
Yeah.
met your brother, but
Yeah.
you know
Well,
but it
he's
was-
in London. It's unlikely, but
Well, he's famous now.
I know, it's really funny how he sort of is famous. Yeah, he's no, and he, you know, the irony of all ironies is that I'm a singer-songwriter, performer, artist who was doing all kinds of stuff on stages, more in the avant-garde world, but like in, you know. And yet, I have made my entire family the famous ones, and now I'm in the back seat. I'm like, they can't walk down the street. No, but I think it's this world of like documentary famous. So they're well known. And certain people will be like, "Hey, I think you were in that documentary." So it's, it's
Your
it's
dad
a
probably
trippy
likes
thing.
it, but I'm not sure about your mom.
Exactly. No, my mom is the one person in LA that does not like being famous.
Yeah.
But my dad, he could just stand on the street corner and talk to pretty much anybody. That's his vibe. He's got a Buddha vibe for sure.
Mike, so when you interviewed Rachel, what was that like? Because it's different being in the studio with her now. But we were all doing, well, most of us were doing Zoom interviews for things.
Yeah, and one of the things about our interview, Rachel, was that that was one of my first Zoom interviews.
Yeah. Wow.
Before that, so that it was a little bit of the technology, seeing somebody. Generally before
Yeah.
that, it would all be over the phone, so I wouldn't actually get a chance to see them. So you were one of my first.
Well,
so,
it was memorable for me too because I was getting a lot of I was in the zone of the press hype thing where you have all your like pile of interviews and people tend to ask you the same questions over and over and over and over and then you were more of a film nerd. I was like, okay, cool. You had more, and then you were just in that documentary space. So
Thank you.
I appreciated being in the a slightly deeper level conversation.
Well, generally speaking, does anyone know how virtual theaters are how is that going?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that making
Well,
any money? for anyone?
Mike and I he was on the show when we had Aristotle and from the
Greek.
executive director from Terry was there
Yep.
too, from the Greek Film Festival. So I've been able to I watched 7 shorts and then 2 features. But what I was pressing about is that we did a Zoom interview with him prior to that, Katerina and I was happy with what they were doing. They were going full force. I think they were one of the first to claim October for the month to do it. Now theirs goes for 15 days.
This
which
is
The film festival.
their film
virtual.
festival. So I like what I've seen so far, but I also was talking to another film critic the other day, Wade Major and then Tim Cozias, and there's too much stuff going on. How do you put everything in the month of October? How I got 3 computers as it is, and I'm spending way too much time in front of them. I don't
Yeah.
want to go into another virtual film festival.
Well, Newport Beach, they're going virtual, and they're doing theirs in October as well. No, but I'm just.
And there's a
to-
horror movie film festival. I've got the Screen Fest that I've got a pass to that I'm going to be watching
Yeah.
a lot of scary movies.
And I juried a few film festivals in the last year, or last few months, and I will say it's sad. It's very difficult because like I had this experience on the festival circuit last year, which now I'm like, wow. I couldn't even imagine a world in which, I got to show my film in Ecuador, in
Wow.
all these different places in so many parts of the country, and including where was the last place? Dayton, Ohio. And I would fly there, and the audience reaction to my movie in super areas where it's kind of like all white and all Trump land or something, I would be like freaking out, like, oh my God, I'm an LA person. This seems really weird to me. And then I would have just watch the audience and the reaction would be really different. And then you watch it in a super gay film festival and everyone's laughing as soon as they see Jeff Stryker, like, oh my God, and all these punchlines. And so you got this feeling. And then, I went, when I was in South America and showing in Ecuador, it was really poignant how, the scenes with my mom in her synagogue was very, people afterwards were like, that was just like my mom in church, it was like the same kind of really religious, heavy overhang. And, you can feel the difference of a really religious, structured environment where, being gay was it's still incredibly hard out there. So the live experience is so truly, it's a truly missed thing for all these filmmakers. I'm really heartbroken for all the filmmakers who work their asses off just like me to get to this point, and then what you want is to see how audiences react. And I think that's I don't know, maybe there's a way to do a virtual Zoom where you can kind of vibe it, but it's just
Not the same. It can't be.
I wonder.
Well, this is why I like Mike Kaspar, because Mike, he's the only person that I know who's interviewing a lot of these people on the documentary side, and which is why I wanted to be here, because I admire him from what he's doing. But when I talk to Mike Szymanski, there's a lot of things that none of us are all getting, and that's my frustration. And I get really pissed off when, because I'm a movie whore. It's called Movie Reviews and More. And they go, and I have no problem telling anybody how many views we have. They go, but I haven't heard you talk about movies. I'm like, well, who are you? I don't know who you are. You may not know who I am, but I guarantee you I've been along I've been here longer than you have, and I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. If anything, we will have 25 million views. You'll be lucky to have a job tomorrow. So give me the movie. Let us talk about it. Let us help make you look good. And that's what I do. That's what I tell him. And I have no bones about telling about that. And so the reason why I admire Mike is because he's doing, I call him doing a one-man job. There's not enough of us left. There's maybe 15 of us who've been around for years. It's going to be less than that.
You mean independent movie reviewers or independent?
Just reviewers in general who's been around. There's not that many left. Siskel and Ebert are dead.
Well, the problem is that anyone can put up a website and call themselves a reviewer. I mean, that was one of the problems that Roger Ebert was saying, was that anyone's calling themselves a reviewer now, and you could just, put up a website. And that's how you got on the screening list, if you got enough hits.
But you were
Right.
supposed
Oh,
to be approved by the MPAA.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was the major thing. Now, I had someone, and I was telling Mike this, someone from New York goes, are you RT certified? I'm like, what's RT certified?
Oh.
He goes, Rotten Tomatoes certified. I'm like, I don't need Rotten Tomatoes. I've got 6 million views a day
Yeah.
and counting. I'm like, and I said, are you serious? And I never heard back from the publicist.
Really?
Oh, but you know what, Rotten.
Yeah.
But I was gonna ask that same thing because so my film for a while was at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. So then I would notice that I was gonna, I was just curious about that. If you have a Rotten Tomatoes certification, only because it helps films if or conversely hurts them if you don't like the movie. But the Rotten Tomato reviewers have a direct effect on your percentage. So I was looking, and I'm like, wow, who are these people that are able to basically influence my film's score? And it was kind of fascinating. There was like Variety and Hollywood Reporter, which would be expected, but then there were independent people. So I was happy to
Yeah,
see
I'm
this
on
kind of,
it. I'm
you
on
are,
it.
so it was kind of democratizing of that space. I was like, oh, okay, like Brian Sebastian could have the exact same power as, Peter Donahue.
But here
from
goes to my
this-
point.
yeah.
It goes back to, Mike, are you RT certified?
No, I'm not, but I'm not a reviewer. Just
But,
to be
but
clear.
I disagree with that. You are a reviewer because anytime you're talking to those people in general,
Yeah.
you're doing a different junket now. Because, Mike, we don't have junkets anymore.
No.
We go back to the day when you had to be MPA accredited. We were at the we practically lived at the Four Seasons. I was there every day for years in the radio room.
We
And
ate
then,
there.
so we had one-on-one access. So this is the new, what you do, Mike, and this is why I admire you. This is the new way of doing interviews. And then when I have the girls on, their mouths drop. I'm like, well, you used to do interviews? Well, yeah, it wasn't that long ago that we stopped. The game changed, and you had to change the way everything is. So when someone said to me, are you RT certified? I'm like, no. Who says I had to be? I was MPA accredited. That overrules everything. But now that you don't have that, that's why I push the views. So when you guys get 6 million views a day and counting, then come see me. Because I can tell you what it was like to get that. It wasn't easy. So Terri was one of the people that's on. And like I said, when I counted up her red carpet stuff that she did, because they're all views and they're all on our Movie Review and More channel on our YouTube, I'm like, wow, she's got really this many views? My mouth dropped when I said that. So I tell her all the time, Terri, no matter what, you may only have 12,000 followers. What's a bigger number? 3 million or 12,000 followers? So I couldn't be more happy for her.
That's a lot of followers, though.
But in general, but it goes back to
Yeah.
you're doing a disservice by not being able to help that filmmaker, which goes back to Mike Kaspar.
Yeah. Well, no, and I just started to realize in my own experience that all the little people matter as much as the big people. And I
Absolutely.
was noticing,
Yeah.
and it just would, just be like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is in Variety, but like that other thing right here, even when you look at sometimes the billboards, if a quote is better from some little blog, that quote might like be on the billboard
Yeah.
right next to like Hollywood Reporter. I'll be like, oh my God, that's like so-and-so's
So
blog.
let's go back to the quotes.
Yeah.
Michael, you and I used to be quoted all the time.
I
They-
know, I regret that.
Rachel and Michael, they used to call us quote whores.
I got made
Yes.
fun of by.
They
by
called
a
us
few-
quote whores
That's pretty
because the
funny.
publicist from say, Brian, will you give us a quote? And then, my friend Ron Brewington, he said, wow, one point for Armageddon. And he said, wow, because think of Armageddon in the 90s. Is the
Jimmy
huge thing.
Kimmel made fun of me in a whole segment
Really?
about it, and
Wow.
we had a publicist at the place I was writing for and asked if I could go on it to defend myself, and they said no. But I have a whole segment on tape of Jimmy Kimmel making fun of my reviews.
Well,
Yes.
in what publication?
Well, I at the time I was writing for Zap To It, which was an online.
Which was Tribune out of Chicago.
Chicago Tribune.
Oh, okay. What year was that?
It was
Was
in
it- was
the
it nine-
90s.
Oh, because I'm
98,
saying
whatever.
that I'm curious, like when Jimmy Kimmel would have been like talking about
It was
you.
it was when he first started the show.
Oh,
So yeah.
cool.
But I'm saying those quotes don't matter anymore because here's the thing.
Yeah. Wow.
No, I say this because until you have what Terry and the girls have, you're in a regular studio. They're not in the studio. Mike, you can't even go to your studio yet, right?
No.
And so Kimball's not at it. He's at home. And again, we're
Yeah.
getting more than networks. And I keep telling people this, so that's why more people keep coming on to us because we have the choice. You can come on the Zoom or you can come in the studio.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this world we're in right now. Like, yes, there's this kind of, platform where you're going to watch SNL, but then right next to it, you'll be like, wow, who's this random, like, YouTuber,
Absolutely.
amazing person? And then it's just the way these algorithms are throwing things at you. And I find it on the flip side, really democratizing, giving people a chance.
I totally agree with you. I've brought this up to Brian before. We live in a world now where no one's going to put $100 million into a budget to promote anything right now, right?
Yeah.
Those for right now, those days are over.
Yeah, look what happened to Tenet.
Well, and that's what I was
Right.
talking about with my film being the underdog because, when I was talking about, promoting it, getting it this far, and I'm dealing with these executives and they're like, okay, well, we're not going to give it an Oscar qualifying run. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if you're not, I can, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we're not going to
Absolutely.
finance it. And then this was pre-COVID. We're not going to finance that Oscar run. And I'm like, okay, well, I can. And it was like, well, don't do that because we're going to promote Michelle Obama and these other movies, which I'm like, sure, I love those movies. Cool. Those will have the full force of Netflix behind them. But can I do my little thing and see what friends of mine I can get to? And then COVID hits. There aren't fancy parties. We aren't whining and dining industry executives and writers.
And Terry will
So-
tell you she was doing red carpet stuff. It's so when she's got 21,000 views or 17,000 views or 30,000 views, believe me, those views add up. Never mind when we went to Tennessee, which are totally separate numbers, and she's on what? How many shows did we do in Tennessee?
We
did
maybe 6.
so I've got a show. So
6,
think about
7,
this.
8.
I got a show talking about books and a documentary called The Last Christmas Ride that benefits St. Jude's Hospital, the Grand Ole Opry, and Elvis Presley brand. That's 1 million views on a show. The show that we did with the Flex 24 that I gave you, Mike, is at 980,000 views. In 10 days, it'll be on 1 million views.
Wow.
So, Rachel, you're
Yeah.
doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and
It's
guess
about
what?
the views.
Just by talking to a few people, I know that there's some people in the Academy documentary section who are very supportive of Rachel.
Well, see, this is what's so interesting. When you think about the old way of doing everything, it's all out the door. And this is what's so
Absolutely.
cool in a weird way. I mean, I have to say, if there's a God, he might have actually planned some of this whole crazy COVID stuff because it's basically shaking things up in this whole world of like, okay, Mother Nature clearly needed a break, so we're actually forced to stop. Our crazy president now has the virus, even though and then now all the people that were told, okay, well, the rules are this. Now it's like, well, those rules were that when we could have social interaction, and now those rules are gone. And, there's $100 million Oscar campaigns that required whining and dining all these people at fancy hotels and throwing
And you
big
can't
parties.
do any stuff
No one's doing that.
anymore.
So the little guy like me can send emails to her friend Mike and be like, Mike, do you know anyone in the doc branch? He goes, yeah, I know these 3 people. Cool. Any of them like gay porn? And they're like, yeah. So then, it's that world of just, going back to, in a way, like the roots of human interaction, which can be like,
I think
Not
we're
gonna
I think what you're, I
people,
think what
yeah.
you're talking about is just it was happening before COVID.
Exactly.
Just what you're saying, breaking down kind of these walls, sort of crashing the castle here a little bit, and it's accelerated moving forward with COVID. Now that I'm doing a radio show out of a university, right, college radio,
cool.
and I've been able to attract some pretty heavyweight people to the show.
Oh, yeah,
because
you have.
because of what you're talking about, Brian. So sort of the idea that the inmates are sort of running the asylum now, in the sense that there are so
I'm happy
many.
to be an inmate.
Yeah, there are so many. Well, there are so many opportunities, or so many venues, so many platforms. There is just so many opportunities for people like we are to be able to tap into that. And I think, again, I go back to one of the things I've said to Brian before. When a film like yours comes out, no one's going to put $100 million into The Tenant or to the James Bond movie right now. So when people are looking at their options, as you described, your film looks just as good as any other film would look
Absolutely.
without a $100 million budget.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
people
that's
are
what's-
looking at it.
And that's what's really amazing is there is something about this organic world that we live in, which also gives, again, to go back to the underdog, people are now rooting for the underdog.
Right.
It's like they feel the sense of like, wow, you told your story,
Right.
maybe I'll tell my story. And that's one of the things I love about, even having like an Instagram account. And I'm just sort of like, oh, I'll go on it and talk to people who are, will tell me, I have this really weird family story and I never thought it would ever be of any interest. And now I see these stories that are very interesting to people, or, things that, someone might have thought is like a shameful, dirty family secret. And now it's like, okay, if I can turn this into something,
Right.
maybe people will care. It doesn't have to be this establishment, Hollywood determining everything.
So let me
anymore.
ask you this.
Yeah.
Terry, would you see her movie on Netflix?
Yes, of course I would.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting
just-
because this is a new way of telling things.
Well, I just was going to add to this. I just think that the COVID has let people see people they might not have watched before. That there's a platform for the little guy that has
Yeah.
talent that no one paid attention to.
Exactly.
So, and then I think other people are being a little bit more creative and learning their talents because they're like, okay, well, I can't, I'm going to use myself for example. I can't do red carpets right now, so I got bored, so I went on TikTok. So then I found that I could be funny on there, and then I'm like tapping into my comedic
Yeah,
stuff.
and
you know
how
what I
many
mean?
views are
And
you
it
getting on
works.
some of your
Well,
TikToks?
some of them I have like almost 100,000. There's one that's got almost 100,000 views. It's like, it blow me away.
Exactly.
Like, and it's like, it's kind of like, I don't know what's going to watch this crap. Like, and I'll do like dumb videos. I'm like just dancing around, just being silly. But like people like that because they want to see you be, they want you to see me normal, because like life is so depressing right now. So I just think that, people are looking for different ways to stimulate their minds.
It's really,
Yeah.
in a way, bad to say. This has been Movie Reviews and More's best year. We've never stopped. This is our 27th straight week of doing Zoom interviews.
Yep.
Straight weeks. We were able to reach 1.1 million views on our YouTube. Like I said, our individual shows out of Tennessee, which are on YouTube, whole nother numbers. We've been able to have 9 different numbers. Eric Zuli's Easy Wall of Fame, I'm number 2 right behind the creator. I got 1,100 views. And they just keep going up because it's another platform to put stuff like this on. Where our stuff in Tennessee doesn't go on YouTube because they go up against YouTube. However, we get the country of Argentina because YouTube is not in Argentina. Think
Well,
about it.
I guess the question about virtual theater releases right now, the regular films, not the film festivals, the regular films, I have no idea how they're doing.
They're
But I
not.
wonder whether or not, once we get on the other side of all this, what is going to happen to physical brick and mortar theaters? Are we going
They're
to go back
going
to them?
out. You
Are
can
we
see-
going? You don't think we're going to go back? Does anybody?
Not until.
I mean, let's say 2 years from now.
Well, that's
we
different.
have a
We'll
vaccine,
we'll
we
figure it out
realize,
at that point. But no, I keep
Drive-ins?
saying drive-ins and everything's got to be done outside.
But do you? I mean, do you think?
I don't
theater-
want
brick
to
and
go
mortar?
into a theater unless I'm the only one in the
What
theater.
about,
Well, no,
My own
and
private
like I
theater.
said, I polled 85 different people. Only one person went in. It was Mike Delaquin. He went into a theater. He went to go see.
So are
he
they
went to go
dead?
see Tenet.
So are theaters dead?
Yeah, they are dead.
Well, for
because
now,
here,
I
I think
think-
there's
here's
something
Yeah.
different. I mean, that's what I was joking with Brian. It's like if I can be in the front row or the back row and have the whole theater to myself with a couple of my close friends who I know are safe, then I'll go to the theater. But otherwise, I don't feel comfortable.
Because here's what I say. It's what people do in the dark when they take their mask off. You are going to be laughing. You are being credited.
I'm going to be eating popcorn.
You know, here's the thing. Black people talk to the screen. I'm not one of them.
talk to this?
They do. They talk to the screen. So, don't
Those
go
are-
there, girl,
That's
during
in
the
certain
Harlem. They
neighborhoods,
do.
Brian.
See, I can say that. But it's one of those things where kids, they will do weird things in the dark, So if someone coughs, just because they got something in their throat, people will go running out of theater. And plus, you don't want a bad thing to happen with COVID in a movie theater. Because my favorite theater to go to is Limley NoHo 7. Who I really love promoting is Bob and Greg Lemley's theaters.
Yeah.
We can't do it.
I know, they're such nice
unfortunately.
guys, It's like, well, that's the heartbreaking thing is these are, speaking as someone who's the child of an independent, small business, it is very heartbreaking for the small business, lovers of the world, and the independent art house theaters. I mean, that's where art film nerds came and found each other. When you were that one weirdo kid who loved weird films in your school, you went to the art house theater if you could. So to me, there's something fundamentally tragic about it right now. But what else do we do?
But I think they will survive.
Oh,
I'm just going to be the
hopefully,
contrarian here a little bit.
No, let's
In-
I
Well,
hope
hope,
so.
hope is
that-
better than nothing.
Yeah.
In that I think anytime you go through a crisis like this,
Of course.
the Chinese character for crisis is also the same one for opportunity.
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they're onto something there where I think theaters are going to need to reinvent themselves.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think they need to be open
Absolutely.
during the day, and there should be other
Yeah.
other services offered. There should be a coffee shop or a
Do
bookstore.
you mean when they reopen?
When they reopen, I
Yeah.
think they're going to need to be more than just let's show a theater.
And they were doing it.
They were
making
doing
the
it
lounge,
kind of.
They
Yeah.
were,
lounge
and
chairs and things like that. And people
With
bringing
cocktail bars
bringing
and stuff, they were
cocktail
doing-
bars. Yeah.
Well, also, do you know about there was this theater here, unfortunately closed in a scandal, the old silent
Oh,
movie
I love
theater.
the silent
movie.
I
I went
know.
there many
It was so
times.
great, and so in the last couple years before COVID, it was just this great place where they brought like musicians and comedians.
Filmmakers.
Yeah, filmmakers, and it was like
Yeah.
it was a true kind of hodgepodge
That's what I'm
of
talking about.
programming where you could have like a live scored silent movie,
Right.
and it would be like a
Right.
contemporary band playing along with it. And I think that I remember thinking like this is the future of keeping people engaged in. Also, as a musician, it's hard to get people out into music clubs
Well,
now
again,
too. So
yeah, you
there's
have
all
to
this
provide an
competition.
experience that they're not
Yeah.
going to get at home.
Yeah.
You're not going to have karaoke night at your house, maybe
Yeah.
not. But I mean, theaters can provide. They're a great platform. I just think we cannot give up on the idea of community.
See, I'm all about
I
going
think
to
we just
movie
have to
theaters.
maintain
That's like my one way to
a
get
public
away.
space.
But when I can't go into the theater to get away, one, it's not a new movie to go see. Two, it goes back to Mike's point. Until you get proper ventilation,
Yeah.
I'm not cool with that.
yeah.
Because even in this studio, yes, I've sprayed down everything and wiped down everything and made sure everybody had hand sanitizer. But there's still people who are freaked out about that. So,
Yeah.
and that's just 4 or 5 of us.
Right.
So they're kind of going their own way still.
Well, I mean, the airlines have had to do they've changed the ventilation on the planes. I mean, they might have to do something
And
in
you
the
still got
theater.
Or
people who
maybe
won't wear
they,
masks,
or
yeah.
maybe they have to do something radical,
Uh-huh.
like plexiglass out, like regions in each seat.
Right.
You are in a plexi, unit, like in a
Yeah.
cockpit of an airplane.
Something is
Yeah.
better than nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it might be really expensive for a couple years to
Well, and
retrofit the whole
group
thing.
And
seating
maybe
with
a
your
lot of
friends,
theaters.
yeah.
Sorry.
Group seating with your friends.
Yeah,
like
and maybe a
the
lot of theaters are
group hop.
99 seat theaters and not
Yeah.
400 or
Smaller
500.
theaters.
So that you could have a small theater. Again, this is you mentioned it. This sort of mix of things. Maybe it's a bookstore, a coffee shop, and a 99 seat theater in the back, so that when people come in, they do their business with coffee or they buy a book. But if they want to see a movie, and maybe maybe the filmmaker's there for 1 or 2 of the nights to do interviews. Those are the things that will bring that you can't get at home.
But
You
here's
won't get
here's
that
the,
at
That's
the only
like-
problem with that, and this is me talking to those CEOs around the world and talking to the publicists, because the publicists are barely hanging on. One,
Oh, I know.
all their clients are doing Zoom interview, and I've been talking to them. We've been having them on
Yeah.
our shows.
Yes.
That's amazing. So if I have Sinbad come in, well, I don't go through his publicist. Rachel, I didn't go through your publicist. I'm not going through people's publicists, and I respect publicists.
Yeah.
But the issue is,
Well, as long as they're really serving the artist, that some publicists are. You find out, and you have to keep your publicists in check. You say, I wanted to talk to this guy. Why didn't you connect me to them? If they have
because
a
some of
valid
them are being
reason.
gatekeepers, and this
They're
is
a
where
good
Mike and I
perfectionist,
talk about
yeah.
with stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's not a reason that I can't talk to John about the thing. I'm glad that Mike too, but we talked to him for the other 2 films. It's like the old system.
Yeah.
You do one thing for us, and then the big one you don't get invited to.
Right.
I'll never forget that I got dissed from Saving Private Ryan and Armageddon because I was the small outlet. I outlasted all those people, and I said, okay, I'll show you what you say can't be done. Because, Terri, we didn't know when we went to Tennessee 2 years ago we were going to have views. We just went to go do a show. I wanted to take it out of California to try something different. It's like premiering a film in Omaha, Nebraska, and let's see what the audience thinks of it outside of Hollywood. And it worked.
Yeah.
So even when we go back, you got a text today from Jimmy, right?
Yes, I did.
Because people are paying attention to what we're
Yeah.
doing. But what I really want to do is I always want to have my friend Mike going. I love what Mike Kaspar is doing, and I can't wait to see what's coming up with you next. But before we talk about that, Mike, talk about a couple films that you've seen.
That recently, well, I'll just go back to the documentary realm. I mentioned Driving While Black, which I thought is just a fantastic.
And when does that come out and where?
It's on PBS. It'll be on POV. I think it's this coming week. Don't quote me on that. But
what's it about? I mean, obviously.
well,
but
it is.
beyond.
It is about mobility. It's about the African American experience in America and how mobility has been central, either the denial of or the achievement of rights.
So it's a historical.
It's a historic.
sort
It
of
starts
timeline?
out with. Yeah, you think it's just going to be about people driving and how that's a relatively new phenomena. No, but it goes back to the very beginning. It goes
Wow.
back to one of the ways in which slavery functioned was to minimize the mobility of slaves, right? That was critical. That's why the Underground Highway was so critically important. It represented mobility. Sundowner towns, which were towns that were prohibited black people from
You had
being
to
there
leave
after
by
dark.
sundown, or you'd be
It's all
hanged.
about
Including
all-
Burbank, people don't realize.
and Glendale,
Really?
and
Yeah.
there's and then
Yep.
also and then it came and then the Green Book, which was the Academy Award winning film, but it was
Right.
based on an actual
Totally
a
true.
guide for people driving from the north to the south.
Places that you could stay.
You could stay. So the film is it's this micro sort of. It sounds micro, but it's about the entire
Wow.
African American experience in this country, and it's just superbly well done.
And I can speak on that because I know what it's like to be stopped in Beverly Hills for tinted windows, walking too fast down Beverly Boulevard and Rodeo Boulevard. Carl's laughing because he understands.
Yeah.
Minding my own business just because I've got my headphones on and I'm walking fast. And I'll never forget, I had a photographer get out of the car, take a picture of me because he thought I was a celebrity, and I was shocked. And I was like, who was that and why did they do that? And then how do I get my picture back? I never forgot that. And then the next thing I do, a cop stopped me. Why are you walking so fast? I'm going to my office. Where's your office? It's over there. I go, why are you asking me? Okay, there's been a carjacking on Gregory Street. I'm like, where's Gregory Street? Over there. To this day, I don't go on Gregory Street in Beverly Hills because of
Wow.
that. To this
Wow.
day, this was in the 90s.
Wow.
Wow.
So that's why I can't wait to talk
Yeah.
to people like that because
It's
walking in Tennessee, walking to our show before Terry got in. I'm walking to our show and a cop drives by me twice, and I'm like, okay, I can see this one coming. He asked me 3 times once he stopped me, where you going? Well, I'm going to go shoot my shows over there for tomorrow. I'm setting everything up. You want to ride? I'm like, no. And then we started talking. He asked me for my ID. This is why I'm walking. There's nothing going on.
Oh, you weren't even driving.
No, I was walking.
Wow.
You
It's hard
know,
to believe stuff
and
like
then
that
you
still
know,
goes
this is in
on.
Tennessee. And he goes, "Sure, you don't want to ride?" I'm like, "No, I walked this far. It's just 7 minutes down the street." He goes, "Who are you gonna go see?" Going to go see Jimmy Adams. Who's Jimmy Adams? That's Don King's best friend. The boxing promoter.
Wow.
Former bodyguard.
That's cool.
Exactly. And then you sure you don't want to ride? And then I'm like thinking, wait a minute, what cop, no matter where you are, ask a black person if they want to ride in their car? No, if you were me, would you
Oh,
have gotten in the
yeah.
car?
Oh my God, no. I mean, the thing is, it's really, it's just such an injustice to even be asked in these ways. And that's why I think documentaries like this are so important, because actually it's really important to hear from the people that experience this constantly. And so people that are not black just actually might not have a clue. And so they have to be like very fully informed with.
But let me ask you,
shows.
Mike, would you have gotten in the car?
Of course not.
Oh my
Rachel,
God.
you?
Oh my God.
Mike
are
Kaspar,
you
would you?
No.
Terry, would
I
you?
don't think
I
you would've
had a
asked
cop
me.
ask me to get in
No,
the
no,
car,
if
but
you
no,
were black.
I wouldn't just pick no matter what.
No.
I don't
No
know
matter
why
what,
he would
no
ask.
matter
So,
what,
That's
yeah.
just-
so like I said,
Yeah.
he asked me
From the
3
get-go.
times, and I kept thinking, no, because we got a show to do tomorrow. If I had gotten in that car, I can't tell you what would happen because I truly don't know. But I do know this: we shot 6 shows the
Yeah.
next day,
Wow.
which led to where we are to those things. And I kept thinking about that. Like,
No, but the basic injustice of it is when a cop asks you anything, you're suddenly in a position of like, well, am I resisting a cop by doing this or am I doing that? And you're in a situation that's unfair immediately just by virtue of being asked that question. That's an inherent unfair situation to be placed in. So it's just important for everyone in the world to hear that. This is your experience, and that's why I think that documentary sounds so vital.
And there's a historian in the film, and I'll just leave it with this, that made a wonderful statement, and that is, in America, we love to celebrate our history. We don't like to look at our history.
ooh, that's so true.
And it is so very true. We have this sort of celebratory idea of this perfect, God-inspired, country, And yet, when you start peeling back some of the layers of how we got here, and one of the things in the film is the fact that television was an important part of the civil rights movement, because we saw Bull Connor
Yep.
and the bridge, Edmund Pettus Bridge. We saw it. Now we have cell phones, and now we see George Floyd. Now we see Sandra Bland. We see Eric Gardner being killed. So this is another part of the documentary. So as you were describing, when we're seeing it,
Yes.
it makes a huge difference. I'll say white people, I'll speak for myself. Why do we have to see it in order to believe it? For me, that's an important question. And so, and it's answered in this film. It's a terrific film. I would also recommend just a couple more, and I don't want to, Our Time Machine, wonderful documentary film about a Chinese artist whose father's afflicted with Alzheimer's. He decides to put together this play that will document his idea of a time machine for his father. So this father, it sort of encapsulates his father's life. So his father, it's his a gift to his father, and it's a beautiful
Sounds
film to watch.
interesting.
Our Time Machine, and Our Time Machine, they say in the film, we have two time machines in each one of us. Our dreams are a time machine, and our memories are a time machine, and
very
those two
true.
things are melded together in this documentary film. So it's a terrific. There's so many more. I don't want to take up too much more time, but
Let's talk about one that we did see. I think we all saw it,
We
except
saw
for
it.
Rachel. Father, it's called Pray, the father,
Pray.
Patrick Payton story. You want to talk about it?
Oh no, I just love the message in that movie. I mean, that's where family. What was the word that when the
Family that
family
prays
prays together,
together,
stays
yeah.
together. But as we had talked about before, it doesn't really matter what religion you are. It just has a good, solid message of hope and inspiration. This is a priest that had tuberculosis. He was able to get through that.
Wow.
He had a mission to be able to get his message to the public. He did that. He picked up the phone, called Bing Crosby, and started
Who's the biggest celebrity in the country?
Started a show about just the power of prayer and got all these celebrities involved in it. But again, what I liked about it, and Brian even mentioned this, it doesn't really matter what religion you are. It just kind of shows you like the power of the mind, the power of will, and it really was kind of a story of love, because he did this more to bring people together. It wasn't really about him.
Where's it streaming so you can watch it?
It's going to be released. He think it was going to be released this month.
Yeah. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
It's just called Pray.
This
Pray.
is the
Okay,
problem that we're finding
Yeah.
out. We're watching great films, but we don't all know the platform because
Yeah.
you know, I'm not watching Disney Plus. I'm not watching
Yeah.
Amazon. I may get some links. I'm strictly just going by what I'm doing, and I'm trying to help what I can on film
He wasn't
festivals
even
and
sure
theaters.
actually, and he said just to check his website.
Oh, yeah, it's
so remember, yeah,
true.
he wasn't even sure.
Did you see Game Changer? I know that fitness is part of what you.
Yes, I
Yes,
did
we
see
did,
that.
Game Changer.
That was
Yeah.
very good.
I heard it was very good.
Yeah.
My sister said it was a great documentary.
It is
Yeah.
really,
What's it
really
about?
good.
It's about the vegan, sort of the athletes are moving more and more to a vegan,
really?
high performance diets, and how that's influencing their performances.
It's
and
working for them?
It's working great for them. It's
Oh.
this idea that you have to, eat a side of beef to be a football player is kind of disappearing. That high performance athletes are
Well,
now.
Terry, you could speak on eating
Well,
clean.
yeah, I mean, I eat clean. I would disagree that all athletes are going that way
Well,
as
you're
far as
right, they're
eating,
not, you're
because
right.
I mean, I'm in the fitness industry. I'm a fitness competitor.
Okay.
So for me, like that diet doesn't work. So
Oh, is
I
that
mean,
right? Okay.
I mean, I'm like I count my macros, so I eat a healthy diet, but it's all clean. So I
Yeah.
mean, any meat I eat, it's all grass fed. Like I mean, I try to respect animals as much as possible, but I'm a meat eater. But I would say that there is more of a vegan. There are vegan athletes, so I mean, I'd say it's still it's a mix.
Okay. Okay.
And how people feel on that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
We got about 5 minutes. I'm just going to mention a couple titles. I was not a Shining fan, but I saw Doctor Sleep, and it was very, very good. This is the best. Where is it on? It's on Hulu. Actually, I saw it through Hulu, but on HBO
Write that
Max.
down, Dr.
And I
Sleep.
just happened to see it. I didn't know what I was watching. I just wanted something good on Saturday night. It's 2 hours and 31 minutes, but it's worth
Wow,
it.
that's a
It's a sequel to The Shining. It's very good.
the sequel to Shining.
Yeah, it's a very,
And
very
so
good.
it's not a doc, it's a narrative.
No, it's a just
Okay,
regular
okay.
film
And where
called Doctor
Where did
Sleep.
you see that?
On
Hulu?
HBO Max.
Oh, HBO
But
Max.
I saw it through Hulu.
Okay.
And then The History of the Comedy Store,
Oh,
which is
that
really,
good?
really good. I'm waiting for this, and that's I don't know if you've gotten it, but it's through Showtime.
Okay.
And so it showed Sunday night. I think the first episode. It's 5 parts, directed by Mike Binder. But it talks about everybody going through the Comedy Store, which
Yeah.
was the mecca to be at, sort of
Right.
like going to Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
And so they've got Leno, they've got everybody except for Steve Harvey,
Wow.
because whatever, I guess Steve didn't like it at that point. But everybody's on tape, whether Sam Kinison, whether it's George Carlin, Jay Leno, all of them. It's very, very
I
interesting.
got to tell you, I used to go there and you'd see like this big woman Roseanne talking about how she's going to get a TV show, and it's like, who is
Yep, and
she?
they got Roseanne
Sam
in there.
Kinison
They got
coming there
tape on
screaming.
everybody.
And then late at night, like after midnight, you would have Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams
right.
working on new material. It was
Wow.
so great.
Exactly.
For just 2 drink minimums.
And they talked about all of that stuff like that. And then it's produced by, the Paul Shore, the Shore
Pauly
brothers,
Shore.
Paulie and his
Shore.
brother.
They owned it, right?
Right,
The family
Mitzi-
owned it,
Mitzi
yeah.
and,
Yeah, it's a
Pauly.
total
Yeah.
family. I should have directed that doc.
Yeah, you.
Another family
Perfect,
story. I
that'd
know,
be
and I
right.
grew up really close to there, so I'm like, wow, that's
Yeah.
no. But my parents saw Roseanne. It was really funny because one of their clerks was performing, and they went to the store, and a lot of their clerks were in the show, in showbiz, and various, Alaska, who became one of RuPaul's big
Yeah.
stars, was a clerk at the store. So they went and saw Jimmy, who was one of their clerks, and he was terrible. And then they said, this little Jewish lady gets on stage and kills it. She was so funny.
Yeah.
And it was Roseanne, and she was just starting out, and
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
great, but he was terrible, and she was great. So you would have that at,
Rachel, you get the last 2 minutes. Talk about
Oh.
your upcoming product.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to add, this is me not being a good self-promoter, but there's a few other docs. Did you see the HBO's The Vow? Oh, it's
I did see that.
See, I love that because it's a doc about this weird, landmark, or sorry, what landmark? Ooh, I said the name. I'm thinking of like the type of corporate retreats that people go
Oh,
to,
I
and they think that they're going to have this sort of like, just, powerful, like, they frame it in this way, and then it turns into this like crazy, creepy sex cult. And so I just thought that was a great doc series, and I'm watching it right now, and I thought I would
Thanks
mention
for
it.
reminding me. I
You
saw
should-
one
you should
episode.
see-
It's
okay.
looks so good.
It is good,
I
and
saw the
yeah. So, but
brand,
I was just
yeah.
thinking other things that if I think of it. But so next projects for me, it was really interesting because as Circus of Books opened up an interest where nobody thought there was any, in the world of, gay underground culture and gay porn stars in particular, I, talking to Mickey, talking to all the people that I know, like Sheila Rue, my own partner, Buck Angel, there's this world of really fascinating people. I mean, forget about the sex. They were really interesting people, and they were, oftentimes desperate, and they find themselves in this situation, and it throws their life off, and they, getting, sex for pay, and then it's this weird thing. And so this amazing story that I started realizing was sort of developing out of just all the characters behind Circus of Books. And I'm developing a series, and Mickey's going to be one of the main sources in it that I interview about all the different people behind the world of gay porn. And so it's going to be called Vaseline Alley because the alley behind Circus of Books was called Vaseline Alley for obvious reasons. And it's a really interesting sort of look back in time as well to the different standards of what it meant for the community. Because, if you were a gay boy and, it was really a gay male space, you weren't given access to your fantasies. We watch Hollywood movies if you are interested in seeing men and women, heterosexual people, and you just look at the screen and it's all there for you. But if you're gay and if you're growing up and you're in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, there was, a very limited amount of space that just actualized, romance even, or, not to even speak of explicit hardcore porn, but just straight up interaction. And so porn created this world for all these people. And so when I was doing Circus of Books, I would have people talk about porn with like tears rolling down their cheeks and be like,
Because a lot of these guys
Yeah.
were heroes to the young gay mainstream guys who they were heroes to these kids who were coming up in the age of AIDS, and not only teaching about gay lifestyle, but also about safe sex. Because as you know, the gay industry had safe sex before before the mainstream adult industry.
Yeah, and ironically, AIDS had this effect on the industry. People fictionalize what is the gay experience by being like, oh, these guys are so scandalous, constantly having crazy sex everywhere. But I talked to so many men who were like, no, I didn't have sex for like a decade. I was really freaked out and shy, and all I basically did was masturbate to porn. And you think, oh my God, it's actually really, on the one hand, heartbreaking to hear, but on the other hand, like, thank God for porn. And that's why I'm saying, like, people would be like, please tell your parents, thank you for making this accessible, and we had nothing. And so you realize there's just also a second piece of it, which is like, why do we shame sex anyway? And that's another thing that I just find, part of this big cultural question around porn. Why does it have to be so taboo?
And what a better way to end. Mike, give your website.
I've got stuff on Amazon under Mickey Ski and Mike Szymanski. My Dachshund books are on there.
Which are doing very well, aren't they?
I haven't checked, but yes, I'm sure they are.
Rachel?
Well, if I had something to plug outside of my film, Circus of Books, you can type my name into Spotify and find the end credit song that I wrote, Rachel Mason, and it's called Give You Everything, and I still make
It was
music.
actually very good.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thanks. Yeah.
Mike?
Mine's simple, filmschoolradio.com, filmschoolradio.com. That's me.
And who do you got coming up, interview-wise?
That's wow. You caught me. I've got.
I
Looks
tend
like
to,
I'm
I
gonna
tend to
get,
do that.
Garrett Bradley, who did a fantastic documentary called Time. It's amazing.
Well, this one right here, Dick Johnson
Dick
is
Johnson
dead.
is dead. Kirsten Johnson. This show is coming up this week. That'll be posted. Oh gosh, I've drawn a blank. Just some good stuff. I want to mention one other documentary film, Boy
Okay.
State, which I thought was a fantastic documentary. If you get a chance to see that, it's fantastic. So,
See, and the sad thing is, I go to Mike to find out which ones that I'm not getting. And then we call, a bunch of us call each other, like, because we're not all getting the same thing. And filmmakers need to know that. It's just not one outlet. It's just like I tell people, you can't put your film and hope you get it into Sundance. What about all the other film festivals that you're missing out on?
That's right.
And they don't realize that. And I know from picking films to Hollywood and Boyd and even Swift out of Tennessee, there's so many different avenues you can go. Reach out to any of us. We'll be
Right.
more than happy. All you to do is Zoom with you. Mike will do it. Mike Szymanski will do it. Terri was on the phone with us for the director for Prey.
Yeah.
So, and again, she's not necessarily a movie reviewer, but it was a still good movie, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I can give my opinion. I just give my opinion on what I think about movies because everybody watches movies.
Well, yes, and we all have the opinions. And my old co-host Bill Margot would say, everybody has an opinion. There's no right or wrong answer to watching your movies.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
never forgot that he said that because he was right. And you knew Bill. He was the most opinionated guy you would ever meet. But if he fought for a film, he was the most creative guy. And he would never let it die. And that's what movies are about. You want to talk about them until the very end because no matter what, keep watching your views because they go up. They
Okay.
never go down.
All right.
And I'll tell you that because of what we do, and they always go up. They never go down. And for that, Terri, your TikTok real quick.
Oh, well, actually, it's Terri Marie nonstop on all platforms. And then my website is terrimarieofficial.com.
Is it Terry?
It's Terri and then Marie and then nonstop.
Nonstop.
Nonstop. It's kind of a nickname.
Like on Instagram too.
Yes. So
Okay, cool.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So,
Awesome. I'm Future Clown on Instagram, so I'll follow you right now.
okay.
For
and
the
I'll
love
follow
of
you
God,
back.
anyone who knows how to work on social media, please help me. Please. By the time I watch
Seeking
a movie,
interns.
I do the interview, I do the edit, I post it. I'm exhausted.
It is
okay?
exhausting.
I'm
Then
gonna
Then
post,
you have to go on Instagram.
and then you go Instagram, Twitter.
Well, if you link them all together, then that way you can just post one thing and then they just
Okay,
say,
all right.
"We'll go here, here, and here."
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
because
Mike, we will find you help because it is exhausting.
Yeah, seriously. I'm going to post over almost 220 interviews this year, and I'm exhausted.
And with that, we have to have a part 2 with this sometime in the
Yeah.
near future before the end of the year because I
Yeah.
really love this show. So, for Mike Szymanski, Rachel Manson,
Mason.
Mason, I'm sorry.
No relation to the Manson family.
This
Much
is
love to
true.
them.
This
But I
is
do
true.
get that a lot. I always wonder. Wow, it's in the zeitgeist.
Mike Kaspar, Nonstop. I'm Brian Sebastian. This is Movie Reviews and More, Women on TV.tv, Worldwide TV Network, and iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. And if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. And we will see you next week.
Yay.
That's a nice